When the tide goes out, a vast tideland or mudflat appears. Mudflats are disappearing one after another in parts of the country, but here at the Ariake Sea, we can find Japan's largest. There are as many as 15 varieties of crabs and fish which are found only on these mudflats. Variation in the tides of the Ariake Sea is large. This provides some unusual living space for its strange creatures. Look closely at the mudflat and you will see little lumps of earth starting to move about. This crab is called a white fan fiddler crab. His pincer measures 4 centimeters. This is the Mutsugoro mudskipper, everybody's favorite at the Ariake Sea. Its body is about 15 centimeters long and it lives in a hole in the mudflat at a depth of about 1 meter. The mudskipper walks skillfully in a way not truly reminiscent of a fish. It has pectoral fins for legs. From time to time, it deftly wets its body, for it would die if its skin dried out. This is a tobihaze, another kind of mudskipper, which, like the Mutsugoro, is a goby. Its body is half the size, measuring around 7 centimeters. It can jump as far as 50 centimeters along the mudflat, using its pectoral fin. Though the tobihaze mudskipper is a fish, it spends more time out of the water, jumping or walking along the mudflat. Long ago, Japan was attached to the Asian continent. Although, due to land movement, Japan was separated from the continent, many of the creatures of that time were left in the Ariake Sea. This fish that looks like the sole of a shoe is in fact a sole, a dembe sole. In Japan, it can be found only in the Ariake Sea. The warasubo is a goby that resembles an eel. Its eyes have atrophied considerably due to the fact that it lives in the mud, but its teeth are sharp and well developed. It is about 30 centimeters long. The large lamp shell cannot be found anywhere else in the world except here. It has been called a living fossil and has lived in this sea for the last 500 million years. The mud piddock is similar to the akagai or ark shell. This one is putting out its long tube from the mud in order to get food. The Ariake Sea is an inland sea in the western part of the island of Kyushu. It covers approximately 1,700 square kilometers, and it is a shallow 20 meters deep on the average. It is known as a sea with a wide variation in its tides, marking as much as 6 meters difference between low tide and high. This means that some 5 billion tons of water move in and out as a result. This is what the mudflat looks like. As the tide begins to go out, the area of mudflat gets larger and larger. covering at the end 1/5 of the sea's entire surface. This is the one and only place where there is a channel between the Ariake Sea and the ocean. It is only 4 kilometers long. Five billion tons of water pass through here in the space of approximately 2 hours. At those times, whirlpools 10 meters in diameter are formed in various places. The tide is now running from right to left at 13 kilometers per hour, about as fast as a moving bicycle. Okinoshima, an island in the middle of the sea, is a sacred spot for the people here. A stone statue called Oshima-san is worshipped on the island. Long ago, this region was plagued by drought, and Oshima-san threw herself into the water as a sacrifice for rain. They say that she drifted ashore. The statue goes underwater at high tide. The tide rolls over the mudflat home of the Mutsugoro mudskippers. Of course, the creatures of the mudflat cannot exist without seawater, but they become terribly busy when the tide comes in. The fiddler crab, one of the symbols of the Ariake Sea, cleverly puts a cover on his hull so that the seawater won't get in. He strengthens it by pushing from below. He does it every time there is a high tide. The Tobihaze mudskipper takes high tide as the time to skip off toward shore. He waits out the 4 hours until low tide on the bank or on a bamboo tree. The statue, too, sinks gradually below the water. It won't come up again for about another 4 hours. We shrunk the 2 hours it takes for high tide to come in. It looks just like a tidal wave coming in from the open sea. We recorded a 5-meter variation in the tide at this time. The gourd shape of the land is the cause of this large difference. The creatures of the sea, as well as the people here, live their lives in slow rhythm with a cycle of nature that changes twice a day. The mudflats of the Ariake Sea were formed by volcanic ash and soil brought little by little from rivers. The mudflats are now 20 meters deep. Organisms such as plankton can be found in the mud. They are the food of the creatures here. The richness of the life here has been nurtured over the past 10,000 years with fresh seawater, sun, and air bathing the mud. When the tide goes out, the creatures start becoming active again. One can see both humorous and at times cruel scenes unfolding before one's eyes. This sentinel crab is literally eating off his friend's back. The white fan fiddler crab takes out of the mud just what is nourishing. He spits out the rest. Here is the Mutsugoro mudskipper eating. He's dining out on algae. Mudskippers defend their territory to ensure a sufficient supply of food. They fight to defend that territory. They drive off other mudskippers who come within 2 meters of their hole. They scare off intruders with their dorsal fin raised. They drive off any intruder into their territory, not only other mudskippers. This mudskipper and this crab share the same type of food. Here we see a Mutsugoro mudskipper with a Tobihaze mudskipper. They eat different things. The Tobihaze mudskipper is flesh-eating, taking lugworms and small snails. The Tobihaze mudskippers also fight among each other. They may be small, but the fact that they eat flesh makes them mean combatants. There is an unusual mud flat about 1 hectare in size by the side of the road. What looks like white stones laid on the mud is really white fan fiddler crabs, each moving its own way. These crabs used to live in many parts of Japan, but now they can be found only here. Each one is about 4 centimeters long. This crab is making a home for itself. It digs to about 50 to 60 centimeters from the surface. It deftly uses its pincers and legs. The crab digs like this when the tide is out, taking pieces of earth 1 centimeter in diameter from the mud over 100 times. The large pincers are not for digging holes, but for fighting. The rule is, the crab turned on his back is the loser. The one on the left which ran away lost, and there will be no more fighting. These crabs never wound each other either. This ferocious-looking marsh crab is the fiddler crab's mortal enemy. It too lives on the mudflats. It is a flesh eater and attacks the fiddler crab without any warning. It has now gone out to search for food. The fiddler crabs know that they will be picked off one by one, so they get out of the way quickly. A male fiddler crab has been caught. He fights for his life with his large pincer. If his pincer is cut off, he cannot survive. The black color below his back indicates the degree of his fear. The pincer has been severed. He has no more strength to flee. marsh crab takes his prize into his hole. Now a female fiddler crab has been caught. She bubbles from the pain. A male appeared at this time. What transpired just then? Let's take another look in slow motion. The male saved the female. The enemy goes for his hole. The female runs off to the left. It seems that chivalry is not dead in the world of white fan fiddler crabs. The people of this region go out 2 and 3 kilometers to the sea over the mud on mud skis. They aren't exactly welcome to the creatures of the mudflat. The creatures run about to escape the ski and hide in the mud. They hold their breath until the mudski has gone by. This man is catching warasubo. He hooks this eel-like fish on a long hook. The people of this region dry warasubo or cook them in a stew. This man is catching something quite rare in the mud. It is a green lamp shell called a living fossil. This brachiopod has lived in the Ariake Sea for 500 million years. The camera captures this bizarre scene of what a mirage does to a single boat. Summer is the mating season for the creatures of the mudflat. A striped goby couple makes its home inside this oyster shell. First, the male made sure to clean out the inside of the shell very well with his mouth before he brought the female in. The cover of the shell is simply blanketed with eggs. The home for this mudskipper couple is a hole in the mud. This is a pregnant female. At night, the Mutsugoro mudskipper starts to make his new home for himself and his chosen partner. The hole is on the side. He uses his mouth to dig the mud. It is an unusual sight. It's quite a job, taking him all night to dig a hole some 50 centimeters deep. This is a female with a noticeably enlarged belly carrying her eggs. Going to look for a date. Once the new home is ready, the male does a courtship dance to woo the female. In 1 minute, he may jump more than 50 times. The female is visible on the left. The female follows a male when she finds one she is happy with. She enters the hole following the male. This ties the knot, as it were. Their entire life together in the hole lasts but 1 night. The eggs are laid very close together, stuck to the ceiling of the hole so that they won't be carried away by the tide. The female leaves the hole after she has disposed of her eggs, and the male stays the 10 days it takes for the eggs to hatch. The white fan fiddler crab male waves his large pincer to invite the female to join him. The only females left on the mudflat are unattached ones, all the others having gone into a hole for the night. The female lacks the large pincer. The males try to get the attention of the few females by waving their pincers. The female is in the center. The female's criteria for choosing a male are the size and the way he waves his pincers. The female sticks with the male that she decides she likes. The female has come to the male's hole. The male goes inside. If the female follows, the die is cast. The male went in. If he's in luck, the female will follow behind. The male is doing his utmost, but the female gives him the cold shoulder. The male is trying again, beckoning, calling. It doesn't look like he's a winner. The female moves about, searching for a suitable male. She's gone in now, but she comes right out again. Looks like she wasn't pleased with the hole. She's gone in another one. If she doesn't come out in 5 seconds, it's a match. There she is again. She looks like she can't make up her mind in a pinch. What about now? She's in. Looks like she's done it. What? The male has come out. The male coming out signals success. Looks like the knot was tied. The male puts the lid on his hole and his union, ensuring that nothing will disturb the activities. Two weeks after the union is consummated, a full moon. The eggs are released into the sea. "10,000 white fan fiddler crab babies are born. Their size is 1/2 millimeter. The baby crabs go out to sea carried by the tide. While in the sea, they shed their skin a number of times and grow, and do not return to the mudflats until the autumn. New lives being born one after another on the seemingly calm mudflat. Deep in the hole, the Mutsugoro mud skipper guards the eggs. This is the first time that a television camera has recorded the hatching of Mutsugoro mudskipper eggs. Newborn babies live in the hole until they can go out on their own. In the autumn, the mudflat becomes a resting place for migratory birds. This is also the season when herons appear in search of food. The herons move their legs, driving the mudskippers out. A heron has caught a Mutsugoro mudskipper. A warasubo is eaten too by a heron. The workings of nature are many and varied, but there are creatures whose numbers get smaller with the years here too. The number of Mutsugoro mudskippers, for example, is 1/50th of what it was 20 years ago, due to pollution of the sea and unplanned fishing. These are parent Mutsugoros. What was once a baby of only 4 millimeters has grown into an adult 2 centimeters long. This year, a policy of protection has begun, and small Mutsugoro mudskippers are being left alone. It can now flip over, the movement of a grown mudskipper. This is the mudflat where the fiddler crabs live. The baby crabs have returned. Only a very small number of crabs come back out of the 10,000 which were born. The babies who have come back are tiny, and it is hard to tell them from the grains of sand. The size of their shell is a bare 1 or 2 millimeters. They can barely hobble along. They already have their own holes. It will take them 3 years to grow to the size of their parents. This is a fiddler crab with red pincers. The baby fiddler crabs have come back to the mudflat too. The right pincer is already quite big. Research has shown that strangely, half of the crabs have a large right pincer and half have a large left one. Mutsugoro mudskippers, white fan fiddler crabs, large lampshells. Nature unchanged, as it was 10,000 years ago. At times filled with water, at other times a vast mudflat, the Ariake Sea remains, as it was, a wondrous body of water.